The
Dance with
CEO
me. My
leaned
ex is
closer
watching.
and whispered 6 words that could destroy him. Dance with me. My ex is watching. Daniel Reed froze. He was the only black man in the executive ranks of that ballroom, a widowed father counting the minutes until he could get home to his little girl. If he kissed her, tomorrow's whispers wouldn't ruin her career, they would ruin his. 15 years of work, a home for his daughter, all of it could vanish overnight. But what he did
What do you
next
think you're doing?
made the entire dance floor go silent.
Oh my
Could
God.
one choice define a whole man? The Riverstone Grand Hotel ballroom shimmered like something out of a magazine, spread crystal chandeliers, gilded, molding the kind of marble floors that announced every footstep. 200 guests in formal wear moved through the space with the practiced ease of people who attended these things, often their laughter calibrated, their smiles professional. The air carried expensive perfume and the faint metallic tang of ambition. Daniel Reed stood near a marble pillar at the edge of the room, checking his watch for the 4th time in 10 minutes. 7:30. His daughter Lily had a strict bedtime of 8, and Mrs. Whitaker from the 3rd floor charged time and a half after 9. Numbers had always grounded him. Numbers were honest in a way most things in this ballroom were not. He smoothed the lapel of his rented tuxedo, conscious of how the fabric sat against his shoulders, conscious of being the only black man in the executive section of the room. He had counted earlier without meaning to. It was a habit his mother had drilled into him before she passed the same year he started college. Always know where you are in the room. Always know who is looking. And remember, you do not have the right to be wrong the way other people do. So be right. 15 years into his career, Daniel had built a life on that principle. Senior operations manager at Cascade Industries. Widower 3 years out, though he rarely said the word aloud at work because it made people set down their drinks and rearrange their faces. Father to a 7-year-old who believed she was destined for Mars and had made him promise to memorize the dessert table tonight in detail. Those were the parts of him that mattered. The tuxedo and the ballroom were costume. You look like a man planning an escape route. Daniel turned. Marcus Bennett, the finance director, had appeared beside him with 2 flutes of something pale and bubbling. Marcus was one of the few people at Cascade who treated him exactly the way he treated everyone else, which after 15 years still struck Daniel as remarkable. My babysitter charges by the hour, Daniel said. Honesty makes the math simpler. Marcus laughed low and amused, then handed him a glass. She is watching you, by the way. Daniel did not need to ask who. Catherine Hart had been the gravitational center of every room she entered for as long as he had worked under her. She stood now in a navy dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent, surrounded by board members, her hair pulled back in that severe way she favored. Brilliant, demanding, completely opaque. In 2 years of reporting to her, Daniel had never once seen her laugh in a way that reached her eyes. She has had a brutal stretch, Marcus said quietly. The divorce was finalized last week. Did you hear Daniel had not? Catherine kept her personal life sealed behind the same thick glass that kept her office cool in summer. That is her business, Daniel said. You are one of the good ones, Reed. Marcus clapped him lightly on the shoulder. Half the people here are already writing a story about her tonight in their heads. The other half are writing one about themselves. Across the room, Catherine's laugh cut through the ambient noise, the polished professional one she used for major shareholders. Beside her stood Preston Vance, the board chairman, telling some story that required broad gestures and the kind of attention he was used to receiving. Preston had not built Cascade Industries. Catherine had. But he had sat on the board since before she joined, and he carried his seniority like a man who had inherited a watch he had not earned. Further along the far wall, Daniel caught sight of a man he had only seen in photographs, silver-haired late 50s, expensive tuxedo arm, draped possessively around a woman who looked barely 30. Thomas Whitmore, Catherine's ex-husband. The woman beside him laughed at something with the kind of practiced volume designed to carry across a ballroom. That had to be Blair Hastings, the lifestyle influencer the gossip columns kept tying to him. Daniel looked away. None of it was his business. He had come tonight because his name was on a required attendance list, and he had 15 years of unbroken corporate decorum to protect. He would shake the right hands, say the right things, leave by 8:15. It was a strategy he had perfected at every fundraiser and every photo opportunity where his face was needed for next year's annual report. Smile, engage, leave on time. Never give the room a reason to remember you in any particular way. Catherine had still not looked his way directly, but Daniel could feel the slow, steady weight of her attention on the side of his face, the kind of pressure a man learned to recognize after years of being the only one of him in any given room. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A photo from Mrs. Whittaker Lilly at the kitchen table, a science textbook open beside her cereal bowl, 2 front teeth missing in a grin. Daniel felt the entire ballroom recede by about a foot. "This," the photo said. "This is what matters." He slipped the phone back into his pocket and checked his watch again. Daniel was about to ask Marcus how much longer the cocktail portion was supposed to last when Marcus dropped his voice and added almost casually, "She asked for you." Daniel looked over. "Asked for me how?" "By name. Specifically. Catherine personally amended the attendance list 2 weeks ago. Senior operations does not usually get pulled into these things. You know that. I assumed someone in HR copied the wrong distribution group. It was not HR. Marcus's eyes had gone careful in a way Daniel recognized. It was her. Daniel rolled the stem of his glass between his fingers. He did not look toward Catherine. He did not need to. He could feel the slight shift in the room every time someone of her stature turned her attention, like a small change in barometric pressure. "Any idea why?" Daniel asked. "I have guesses. None of them are clean." Marcus glanced at him, then past him, then back. "Listen, Reed. You are one of the good ones here, and I do not say that to a lot of people. Whatever she wants tonight, whatever this is, be careful. This room is not built to be fair to you. You know that." Daniel did know that. He had known it the first day he walked into Cascade Industries' corporate headquarters 15 years ago, a junior analyst in a tie his mother had ironed, and a young executive had asked him if he was there to deliver lunch. He had smiled politely, corrected the man, and gone on to outwork every single person on his floor for the next decade. "I hear you," Daniel said. The string quartet near the dais shifted into something slower, something deliberate. Around the room, conversations softened. A few couples began drifting toward the cleared section of marble that served as a dance floor. Catherine extracted herself from the cluster of board members with the smooth efficiency of someone closing a meeting. She acknowledged Preston Vance with a small, neutral nod. She passed a senior vice president without slowing. She moved through the crowd in a straight line, and the straight line was pointed at Daniel. "Good luck," Marcus murmured, melting away with the survival instinct of a man who had spent 2 decades in corporate politics. Catherine stopped 3 feet from Daniel. Up close, the makeup was flawless, and the eyes were not. There was a tightness around them that had not been there in last Monday's leadership meeting, a hairline fracture in the composure she was famous for. "Daniel, I am glad you could make it." "Ms. Hart," he said. "Catherine," she corrected, her voice quieter than before. "We are not in the office." The correction was small. It was also, Daniel realized, very deliberate. In 2 years, she had never once invited him to call her Catherine. Not after the Riverside pitch he had carried for her last spring. Not after the budget rescue he had pulled off at year-end. Not once. Behind her, Thomas Whitmore had turned his head in their direction. The smile on his face was the smile of a man enjoying the view. Catherine followed Daniel's eyes, then looked back at him. For a half-second, the careful executive mask slipped. Underneath it was something raw humiliation and fury, and the kind of exhaustion that comes from holding yourself together in front of strangers for too many months in a row. Then it was gone, sealed back behind the navy dress and the calibrated smile. "I need to ask you a favor," Catherine said. The phrase landed in Daniel's chest like a coin dropped into deep water. He kept his face still. "All right," he said. Catherine glanced over her shoulder. Thomas had turned, slightly pretending to listen to something Blair was saying, his eyes never quite leaving Catherine and the man standing in front of her. The performance of inattention was almost worse than open staring would have been. "Thomas is here with his fiancée," Catherine said. Her voice was very level. "They are getting married next month. Preston already made a comment to me earlier this evening about emotional stability during transitions. He used those exact words." Daniel said nothing. He had learned a long time ago that silence was sometimes the most respectful answer a person could give. "The next dance is starting," Catherine continued. "I would like you to partner with me. One dance. That is all I am asking." It was on its surface a reasonable request. CEOs did not stand alone on dance floors while their ex-husbands flaunted new fiancés 6 feet away. Junior executives partnered with senior ones at galas all the time. It was by every conventional measure of corporate decorum a small thing. But Daniel was not a junior executive at a conventional gala. He was a black man at a corporate gala in a room full of white board members and white photographers and white spouses with smartphones in their evening bags. And the woman asking him to dance was not just any senior executive. She was the CEO. She was a recently divorced white woman with a wounded ex watching from 12 feet away. If a white colleague accepted this dance, it was office politics. If Daniel accepted it by Monday morning, there would be a narrative attached to him. He could feel it the same way he had felt the executive asking if he was the lunch delivery 15 years ago. He could feel it the way he had felt every glance during the photo for last year's annual report when the photographer kept asking him to soften his posture. But refusing the CEO of Cascade Industries in front of 200 people at her gala with her ex-husband watching, that was not a smaller risk. That was a different kind of catastrophe entirely. That was a man going from senior operations manager to the one who embarrassed Catherine Hart in public by Monday morning. That was the end of the Riverside project. That was the end of a lot of things. Daniel did the math the way he had done math his whole adult life. He took the option that kept the most doors open. "All right," he said again, "one dance." Something that looked very much like relief moved across Catherine's face. She did not let it stay long. "Thank you, Daniel." She turned toward the dance floor. He followed half a step behind the way decorum required and felt every eye in the room calmly recalibrate. The string quartet eased into something measured and old. Daniel placed his hand at the small of Catherine's back, careful to leave the appropriate space between them, and felt her other hand settle on his shoulder. She smelled faintly of jasmine and citrus, something expensive that did not quite cover the tension humming through her arms. They began to move. He was quietly grateful for the ballroom dancing lessons his wife had insisted on before their wedding. She had laughed at him for being stiff. "Move like you trust the person across from you, baby. The rest will follow." Years later, in a hotel ballroom full of strangers, the muscle memory still held. "You are better at this than I expected," Catherine said. "My wife taught me. She would not have let either of us get married without it." Something shifted in Catherine's expression. "I did not know you were married." "Was. 3 years ago. I am sorry. I should have known. Why you are my employer, not my biographer." A small, surprised smile touched her mouth, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "Still." The quartet moved into the second phrase of the piece. Around them, other couples had found their rhythm board members with wives, junior executives, trying to remember which foot went where. Daniel could feel the room watching, not staring exactly. The polite, sustained, granular attention that always followed him in spaces like this. He kept his eyes on a point just past Catherine's left ear. He kept his hand exactly where it had started. "You have a daughter," Catherine said. "Lily, 7. Currently convinced she is going to be the first person on Mars." The smile returned briefly. "What does she think of you being here tonight?" She made me promise to memorize what the desserts looked like, so I could describe them in detail tomorrow. She is very invested in cake architecture." Catherine laughed. It was not the calibrated professional laugh she used for shareholders. It was something smaller and more startled, as if the sound had escaped before she could decide whether to allow it. For a moment, the woman in front of him was not the CEO of Cascade Industries. She was just a tired person who had not laughed properly in a long time. Then her gaze shifted past his shoulder, and Daniel felt her hand tighten on his. He did not need to look. Blair Hastings had a laugh with a particular pitch to it, theatrical and bright engineered to carry across a room. Thomas had brought her onto the dance floor. "Hey," Daniel said quietly. "You do not have to watch them." "Everyone is watching everyone," Catherine answered. "That is how this works." She was not wrong. Daniel kept them moving, slow turn, light pressure, steady rhythm. Whatever Catherine was carrying, it was traveling through the press of her hand into his palm, and the kindest thing he could do was not let her feel his own pulse spike in response. Thomas spun Blair into an exaggerated dip somewhere behind him. She laughed again loud enough that two members of the board turned to look. "Baby, you are stepping on my dress," Blair Stage whispered in a voice clearly meant to carry. Catherine's spine stiffened against Daniel's hand. He could feel her breathing shift faster, shallower, the breath of a woman fighting a private war in a public room. 7 years, she said suddenly. Her voice was low, meant only for him. "We were married for 7 years. He did not answer. She was not asking him. "Do you know when it started with her?" Her eyes did not leave a point somewhere over his shoulder. "Our anniversary dinner. Last year. He texted her from the table while I was in the restroom. I saw it when I got back. Just a glimpse of his screen. Missing you tonight." Daniel kept them moving. "I confronted him in the parking lot. He said it was nothing. A business associate. I wanted to believe him because believing him was easier than admitting I had spent 7 years building a life with a man who was capable of that." Her breath caught. "He proposed to her at the same restaurant where he proposed to me. I found out from a magazine spread. They used the same photographer." The quartet slipped into something with more swell to it. The dance floor had thinned and tightened, couples drifting closer to the center as if drawn by the music. "I am sorry," Daniel said, and he meant it the way he meant most things. He said quietly and only once. "Everyone says that." Her eyes were bright. No tears, though. Catherine Hart did not cry at corporate galas. Daniel had the distinct sense that she had been holding the line on that particular point for 6 months and counting. He felt the room recalibrate around them again, not because of anything Catherine had said, which had been spoken only to him, but because of the way they were now standing, closer than the start of the dance, her hand higher on his shoulder. The picture of them from 20 feet away was beginning to tell a story he had not agreed to be in. He was not just dancing with the CEO anymore. He was the black man dancing close with the white CEO, whose ex-husband was watching from across the floor. And somewhere in the room he was certain at least one phone was already out. The music built. Daniel could feel it in the quartet's intensity, in the way the dancers around them moved with more purpose. Catherine's hand slid from his shoulder to his chest, not suggestively more the way a person reaches for something steady when the floor begins to tilt. "Daniel, I need to ask you one more thing." A warning bell went off somewhere behind his ribs. He kept them moving for one more measure. "All right. I need you to kiss me." He stopped. 2 beats went by before he registered that his feet had simply quit. Around them, other couples kept turning. Catherine stood very still in his arms, her hand resting flat against his chest, her face composed in a way that was somehow worse than tears would have been. "What?" "Just a moment. Right here. Where everyone can see. Where Thomas can see." Her voice was low and rapid, the words pressed close together. "I need him to think I have moved on. I need him to think someone else wants me. I need him to think I am not just the woman he left behind." Daniel's mind did not race. It went very still, the particular stillness he had learned to summon at the worst moments of his life. The afternoon, the oncologist had walked into the consultation room with that careful expression on her face. The morning he had to explain to a young child that her mother was not coming home. In that stillness, every consequence laid itself out in front of him in clean, terrible order. By Monday morning, there would be a video. Not even a question of whether there were too many phones in this room, too many people who fed gossip columns for the price of a drink. The kiss would be on someone's social media within 40 minutes. By tomorrow afternoon, it would belong to the internet, and the internet had a long and well-documented set of preferred narratives about white women in expensive dresses and the black men they were photographed kissing. He could see the headlines. Cascade's CEO seen with senior operations manager. No, they would not be that neutral. Catherine Hart's new romance. Catherine Hart spotted with subordinate at charity gala. Comment sections he could already write in his head. The same comment sections that had filled with sewage under every news photo of a black executive in his lifetime. He could hear the whispers in the break room at Cascade. That is how he gets the Riverside Project, then? We always wondered. He had heard versions of them his entire career at his very first internship when he had been assigned a high-visibility account, and a colleague had said loud enough to be heard, of course they gave it to him. He saw his daughter's classroom. Another child pulling up something on a phone. He saw the small face he loved most in the world having to figure out what to do with what was on that screen. He saw his mother. Years gone and still that mother. Always know where you are in the room, baby. Always know who is looking. He saw 15 years of work, the apartment he was finally close to being able to upgrade, the college fund he had been quietly seeding since Lily turned 3, the promotion track he had been threading needle by needle since he was 23 years old. All of it. For 1 second of a performance Catherine wanted to put on for a man who did not deserve a single additional second of her thinking about him. The quartet swelled. The other couples kept turning around them. "Daniel," Catherine said again, softer now. He looked at her properly for the first time since she had asked. He saw beneath the makeup a woman who had been holding her face in a particular shape for 6 months straight and was now openly cracking in a public ballroom. He saw the desperation that did not care at this exact moment about anyone but herself, not because she was a bad person, but because pain that deep tunneled a person inward until the world outside their own skin stopped being fully real. He understood her. He still could not do what she was asking. "Catherine, please. You do not know what you are asking me." Her eyes searched his face. For a moment, he could see her trying to work out whether he was refusing, hesitating, or negotiating. He saw the executive in her come back online for 1 calculating second looking for the lever. He felt very precisely the moment she found it. She drew in a small breath. Her hand on his chest steadied. The desperation in her face rearranged itself into something more focused, the look she wore in the last 15 minutes of a difficult negotiation, when she had found the term the other side would have to accept. It was not a cruel expression. It was simply who she had trained herself to be for the last 15 years, surfacing in the only way it knew how to surface when a woman she barely recognized had asked for help and been told no. "Daniel," Catherine said. "Let me make this easier for both of us." He braced. "The Riverside Project." The words came out quickly low, just under the music. "I will give it to you. Full autonomy. Your choice of team. Whatever budget you ask for signed off before close of business Monday. It is a career maker, Daniel. You know it is. You built half the pitch for it last spring and watched someone else get the lead." The quartet was 4 measures from the end of the piece. Daniel could feel the room pressing in around them, every conversation muted at the edges, every glance angling toward the dance floor. He knew the Riverside Project the way a man knows the shape of a door he has been standing outside of for years. 18 months of preliminary work. The pitch he had carried through 3 rounds of stakeholder meetings, while his then supervisor took the credit for half of it. The accounts, the international travel, the line in his bio that would, in 5 years, become the line that opened every executive recruiter's email. It was the project that would have moved Lily into a school district with a better science program. It was the project that would have finished her college fund inside of 3 years. It was the project that would have meant for the first time in his career that he stopped being introduced as senior operations manager and started being introduced as something else entirely. Catherine could not have aimed more precisely if she had X-rayed him. He recognized the offer for what it was. He had seen this exact shape before dressed in different clothes. The internship that came with conditions that were not in writing. The promotion someone older had told him to be grateful for, as if it had not been earned twice over. The smile from a senior partner that meant you owe me now and I will collect at a time of my choosing. The Riverside project was not a reward. It was an invoice waiting to be signed. If he kissed Catherine on the dance floor right now in front of Preston Vance and Thomas Whitmore and 200 phones, he would not get the Riverside project because he had earned it. He would get it because his boss had needed something from him and he had delivered. Every meeting for the next 10 years, every promotion, every raise would carry the silent question, "What else did you do to get there?" And he would be the only one in the room who had to answer it. Lily, somewhere down the line, would inherit that question too. He could hear his mother's voice again, the same one that had walked him to the bus stop on his first day of middle school. Your dignity is the only thing nobody can take from you, unless you hand it to them. Then they get to keep it forever. Catherine was watching his face. He saw her register the change before he had even chosen the words. The negotiator's mask had not fully closed over her own face. Yet there were still fault lines under it, but it was trying to. The Riverside offer was already cooling in the air between them, hardening into something they both knew could not be unspoken. She was offering him the biggest thing he had ever wanted. She was also, without quite meaning to, telling him exactly what he was worth to her in this particular moment, the price of 1 second of theater for a man who would still be Thomas Whitmore on Monday morning, no matter what either of them did tonight. "Daniel." The music began its final descent. Daniel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The music was loud enough to cover them, and the words he had been carrying his entire adult life did not require volume to land. "Catherine," he said, "you can do better than this." She stared at him. "What?" "You can do better than this," he repeated just as quietly. "Better than using me. Better than turning your pain into a performance for a man who does not deserve another minute of you thinking about him. Better than asking another human being to trade his life for 1 second of revenge against an ex who is going to find a way to feel like he won no matter what you do." The last note of the piece hung in the air. Around them, couples were finishing in dramatic poses, dips held positions, the small theatrical flourishes that always closed those particular kinds of pieces. Applause rippled at the edges of the room. Catherine and Daniel stood in the middle of the dance floor, no longer moving. Her hand was still on his chest. He felt her fingers register what he had said, 1 knuckle at a time. The desperation came off her face first, then the executive. Then, for a flickering second, something that looked very much like the woman she might have been before 15 years of armor had been welded over her. "You are refusing," she said. "I am declining," Daniel answered, "to do something that will hurt both of us. There is a difference." She drew her hand back from his chest as if she had only just noticed where it had been. Her fingers curled, then uncurled, then settled at her side. Color rose along her collarbones in a slow, terrible bloom. She did not finish the sentence. He had seen her recover from worse in boardrooms. He had watched her absorb a hostile shareholder's accusation and turn it into a smile and a redirect inside of 6 seconds. He waited, expecting the executive to come back online and seal her shut. It did not happen. Instead, something in her face simply gave out. Not tears, not a sob. Just the small particular collapse of a person who had finally heard out loud what she had been doing. "Oh, God," she whispered. She looked down. Her hand went to her own forearm, gripping it as if to remind herself she was a person with edges. "Oh, God, Daniel, I just asked you to... I know. I did not..." Her voice cracked very quietly. "I did not think about what I was asking you. What it would mean for you. I have spent 6 months telling myself I would never become like him, and the first time I get a chance to use someone Catherine. I used my position, on my employee, on..." Her eyes flicked across the room and back, and he watched her arrive at the rest of the sentence without help. "On a black employee, in a room full of Preston Vance and 200 phones and my ex-husband. I did not, Daniel, I did not even see it. I did not see what I was asking you to carry." That was when he knew the dance was actually over, not the music. The music had ended 30 seconds ago, and the applause had moved on, and a fresh piece was starting up behind them. Other couples were already reorganizing around them, expecting that the two of them would either kiss or laugh or do whichever flourish CEOs and senior operations managers did at the end of a charity gala number. They did neither. Catherine stood in front of him with the marble floor under her heels and her composure on the floor between them. In a way he had not seen in 2 years of working under her, Daniel was looking at the woman without any of the careful coatings she put on every morning. She had asked him to set himself on fire to keep her warm. She had only just now understood she had asked it. Across the ballroom, Thomas Whitmore was laughing at something one of the younger executives had said. Blair Hastings was scrolling through her phone, no longer interested in a dance floor that had stopped performing. Preston Vance was watching Catherine and Daniel over the rim of a glass of bourbon with an expression that gave nothing away. The room had not yet decided what story to tell about what it had just seen. It would decide soon. Catherine drew in a breath that visibly shook on the way down. When she looked up at Daniel, her eyes were not bright with unfallen tears anymore. They were just open, all the way open, in a way she had not allowed in years. "I need to step off this floor," she said. "Before I do anything else I will regret." "All right." "Will you..." She stopped herself. He could see her choosing her words, choosing not to use them as instruments. "Would you walk with me, just to the edge, not for the room, for me?" It was the first thing she had asked him all night that did not come with a cost attached. "Yes," Daniel said. He turned slowly and offered her his arm, not the way a man offers a partner at the end of a dance, but the way a man offers a chair to someone who has just stood up too fast. She took it. Her fingers were cold through the sleeve of his tuxedo. They walked off the dance floor together in full view of the room. Neither of them looked at Thomas Whitmore. Neither of them looked at Preston Vance. Daniel kept his eyes on the door at the far end of the ballroom and on the woman holding his arm and on a quiet, steady fact he had not let himself name until that very moment. He had just changed both of their lives. The gilded doors of the ballroom closed behind them, and the noise of the party fell away into the dim hush of the hotel's marble lobby. Catherine let go of Daniel's arm the moment they were out of sight of the room. She walked another 3 steps and stopped beside a tall column near the lobby's fireplace, one hand braced against the cool stone as if she needed something solid to hold on to. The chandelier overhead threw soft light across her face, and for the first time all evening, she did not seem to be trying to control how that light landed. Daniel stayed a careful distance away. He gave her the space to fall apart, or pull herself together, whichever was going to happen first. He was not sure himself which one he was hoping for. "I do not know what to do now," Catherine said. Her voice was thinner than it had been on the dance floor. "I have been planning for tonight for weeks, how I would look, what I would say if Thomas spoke to me, what I would do if he did not. I built the entire evening backwards from a single moment I was going to have with him." Her laugh came out wrong, small and dry. "And now I am out here. And the entire evening is gone. and I do not know what is supposed to come next." "Nothing is supposed to come next," Daniel said. "You can just stand here." "That is not a strategy. It is tonight." She closed her eyes. He watched her throat work as she swallowed something difficult. "Why are you still being kind to me?" she asked. "I tried to use you. I offered you a bribe. I am your boss, which makes the whole thing worse, not better, and I—" Her voice cracked very quietly, and she made a small, impatient motion with her hand as if she could wave the crack away. "I should not have to ask why you are being kind. That is the problem. I have been in rooms with people for 15 years, and I have forgotten that some of them are kind, for no reason at all." Daniel waited until she opened her eyes again. "Catherine," he said, "can I tell you something my mother used to say?" "Yes." "She used to tell me that dignity is the only thing nobody can take from you, unless you hand it to them. Then they get to keep it forever." He shifted his weight, eased his hands into his pockets. "I was not going to hand mine to anyone in that room tonight. Not to Thomas, not to Preston, not—" He met her eyes. "Not even to you. That was not about kindness. That was about me. The kindness part is separate. The kindness part is just because you needed someone to remember you were a person tonight and I happened to be the one standing there." He watched the words land. He watched her, possibly for the first time in her adult life, simply receive something without examining the angles on it. "I have not cried," Catherine said. "Tonight. In 6 months." Her voice was very level, the way people speak when they are reporting a temperature. "Not when I found the texts, not in any of the lawyer meetings, not when it was finalized. Everyone keeps telling me I am handling it so well." She drew in a small, careful breath. "I think I have been postponing it. I think I have been postponing it so hard that I almost did something tonight that would have made it impossible to ever—" She stopped, shook her head once. "Impossible. Postponing is exhausting." "It is what I am good at." "I think you are good at a lot of things." She made a small sound that was almost a laugh, and was mostly something else. She lifted one hand to the bridge of her nose, pressed there for a moment, and lowered it again. She did not cry. She did, however, stop trying not to. He gestured toward a low velvet bench across the lobby, half hidden behind a tall arrangement of white lilies. "Come on, sit down. 5 minutes. The party can do without you for 5 minutes." Catherine looked at the bench like a foreign object, then walked to it and sat. Daniel sat at the other end, leaving a careful arm's length between them. "My wife and I went to counseling once," he said after a moment. "Just one session. She was not sick yet. She just wanted to make sure we had the tools before we needed them. The therapist said something I have never forgotten. Authenticity is uncomfortable, but manipulation is exhausting. Decide which one you want to build a life on." That is an expensive sentence. It was an expensive session. Catherine breathed out through her nose. Not quite a laugh. Closer to one than anything else she had managed all evening. "I think I have been building on the wrong one," she said. "You can build on a different one starting tomorrow." "Just like that." "Not just like that. But tomorrow is a reasonable place to start." She studied her hands for a long moment. The wedding ring was gone, had been gone presumably for months, but the faint, pale band where it used to sit was still there, visible only because he happened to be sitting at the right angle. "Daniel," she said, "I owe you a real apology, not a corporate one." "All right. I am sorry I asked you to dance. I am sorry I asked you to kiss me. I am sorry I tried to buy you out of your own judgment with a project I should have given you 8 months ago on merit." Her voice was quiet, level, with the discipline of a person who knew she had to say the sentence cleanly the first time because she was not going to get the strength to say it twice. "And I am sorry that in the middle of the worst moment of my own life, I did not stop for 1 second to think about what it would cost you to stand in that ballroom and do what I was asking. That is the part I am most sorry about, because I should have known. Because you have worked for me for 2 years, and I have eyes, and there is no excuse for not knowing." He let the apology sit between them without rushing to soften it. Thank you for saying that, he said. Is it enough? It is the start of enough. Catherine nodded slowly. She did not push for more than that. What do I do now? She asked. Now you go home. I am the CEO. There is a shareholder remarks segment after dinner. Preston expects me at the head table for... Catherine, you are the CEO. You can leave whenever you want. You do not need permission from Preston Vance to walk out of a building. She looked at him. You sound like my therapist, she said. The one I have not started seeing yet. Maybe start seeing her. Maybe. He pulled his phone out of his pocket, checked it. Mrs. Whitaker had sent a follow-up. No rush, but she is asking when you'll be home. She has cake questions. Daniel felt the entire evening recede again, the way it had at the start of the night when the photo had come through. There was a real life on the other side of these gilded doors, and it ate cereal and built solar systems out of fruit. I have to go, he said. Lily is waiting up. Go. Catherine straightened her shoulders. The CEO armor tried to come back online, then failed, then settled into something gentler that he had not seen on her before. Daniel. Yes. Thank you for seeing me tonight. The actual me, not the CEO version. The CEO version is impressive, he said. The actual one is braver. He stood. She stood with him, smoothed the front of her navy dress, lifted her chin without performance. Then they walked together to the lobby's main entrance, and the valet pulled his modest sedan around. He did not look back at the ballroom doors. He did not need to. The drive home was quiet. Halfway across the bridge, his phone rang through the car speakers. Marcus Bennett. You left, Marcus said without preamble. People are talking. Let me guess. They think something happened between Catherine and me. Among other theories, Thomas Whitmore is telling anyone with a free hand that Catherine's mental state is concerning. Preston looks like a man who just discovered an unauthorized line item on a budget. Blair Hastings posted a story about winning whatever that is supposed to mean, and about half the senior staff is workshopping a story about you. People need hobbies. This is Riverstone corporate politics. Speculation is the hobby. Marcus's tone shifted. What actually happened, Daniel? Catherine asked me to dance. We danced. Then we both left because parties are terrible. That is remarkably boring. Good. For what it is worth, Marcus said, she looked more human walking off that floor than I have seen her look in months. She is human, Marcus. People forget that about bosses. Most bosses forget that about themselves. Marcus exhaled. Watch your back on Monday. Preston does not like disruptions to his narrative, and you have somehow become one. Noted. They hung up as Daniel pulled into his building's parking garage. Mrs. Whitaker was in the kitchen when he let himself in, knitting something that might have been a scarf or possibly a very ambitious blanket. Lily was already asleep, she reported. Homework finished. Teeth brushed. Only 12 minutes of bedtime negotiation, which she was generously rounding down to progress. Daniel paid her, including the time and a half. She left with a knowing smile and a comment about the dessert table he had promised to describe in detail tomorrow. He stood in the doorway of his daughter's room for a long minute after Mrs. Whitaker was gone. The star projector she insisted on running every night turned slow constellations across the ceiling. She had kicked off her blanket. He pulled it back over her shoulders and she stirred without waking. Whatever Monday morning was going to look like, whatever Preston Vance and the gossip mill and the half-written video on someone's phone were going to try to make of him, none of it was in this room. This room had a sleeping 7-year-old and a paper Mars rover taped to the ceiling fan. This room was the answer to every question the ballroom had asked him tonight. The email came in at 5:47 in the morning. He was already awake, drinking coffee at the kitchen counter, watching a thin gray light push itself across the harbor. Daniel. Thank you for last night. I am taking Monday as a personal day. On Tuesday, we should talk about your leadership role on the Riverside project. You have earned it on merit, and I should have offered it to you that way 8 months ago. I would also like if it is ever appropriate to meet your daughter. I think I have things to learn from a child who writes eulogies for cantaloupes. Catherine. He read it twice. He read the line about Lily a third time and felt something quiet shift in his chest. Lily padded into the kitchen at